Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rajan Pereira. Global carbon emissions from fossil fuel industry could fall by a record 2.5 billion tons this year, a reduction of about 5% as the coronavirus pandemic triggers the biggest drop in demand for fossil fuels on record. The unprecedented restrictions on travel, work and industry due to the coronavirus has ensured several days with good quality air in our choked cities. Pollution and greenhouse gas emissions have fallen across continents. Is this just a fleeting change or could it lead to longer lasting falls in emissions? That's what we're going to discuss on this edition of The Big Picture. Joining me on the program today are Kalyan Verma, wildlife photographer and filmmaker, R.R. Rashmi, former Special Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forests, and Professor C.K. Varshney, environmentalist and former Dean, School of Environmental Sciences, JNU. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Professor, let me begin the program with you. Let's first analyze and try and understand what kind of an impact the coronavirus pandemic has had on the environment as a whole.
I think the coronavirus has a lot of impact on the environment, which at present is very welcome sign. But it is at a great cost of human life as well as the loss to the economy, which is very threatening and very scary. Let me tell you that the air quality has tremendously improved because the transportation has been curbed down and all of us are under lockdown. And as a result, the fuel costs have come down as well as the demand has gone down very deeply. And consequently, the air quality has improved. In fact, the NO2 levels have come down very drastically. And in fact, at some places, it is 40% reduction or 4 times reduction or 40. So the question is that will this continue? This is an important issue. And I think we have learned some lessons also on this account. Work from home has become a norm. Earlier, people were very suspicious whether this will work or not. But in fact, the results are that it is as good or even better. And therefore, the demand for travel is not going to be same even when we are in a post-corona period. However, from the industry side, we are not sure because 2008, the kind of economic depression that we have seen also resulted in lot of saving on fossil fuel and reduction in carbon emissions. But very soon it caught up and again exceeded. So we do not know whether this is going to happen. In fact, there are many countries which are going to loosen their environmental laws in order to catch up with the loss in production and as well as with the kind of economies that they have. So I think there are a lot of dangers about it. This is one aspect. The second aspect is that water quality in the rivers and in our water ponds have greatly improved. In fact, Yamuna, which was very difficult even to look at and smell, now we find that there is a blue water and in fact you can see the shallow bottom as well. So I think these are the positive gains. In fact, even in Ganga, where we have spent so much time and toil and we were not able to get the desired result, we find that now the water has been flushed and there are 2 reasons for that. First, the demand of water has gone down because industry doesn't need that water. And in return, the same quantity of effluents are not coming into the river. So I think these are the 2 very important lessons, which means that if we do water economy, which is a must, then I think we will be able to save our rivers much better than creating all kinds of structure on which our main emphasis has been so far. These are the 2 things. Number 3, which is most important, is that this is going to affect our sustainable development goals in a very severe manner. There is going to be a lot of poverty, which is going to come back. In fact, we are going to lose all that ground which we have gained in last 2 decades or so. So I think that is very serious. And related to that will be the question of food availability and food security. And these are the issues. Summer is coming and water scarcity is really facing. So I think these are some of the things that we have to be very careful. The only thing that I will say that the wildlife has greatly improved. Now you find there are lots of birds, as you have rightly said, that there are some birds which are going and saying hello every morning to you, which were not there. In fact, many cities are really witnessing that wildlife is coming. So as we have withdrawn, the wildlife finds it very congenial to really take on the territory which we have really stolen from them. Let me give you one very good example. In Hong Kong Zoo, they have been trying to really have the pandas to really get pregnant, and they were unsuccessful. Repeated effects have been unsuccessful, but now they are reporting that the panda has become pregnant, and they are expecting that the full term pregnancy will take place. There is another thing which is happening and which is very new to the science as well as to the human experience, that the viruses have come from wildlife, and now from human the virus is going to the animals. And the zoo, the tiger that we are seeing, which has suffered in the New York Zoo, is one such example, which to my mind is a very serious alarm. Last thing that I would like to say before I come next in the discussion is that we have to respect nature, and more so the biodiversity, and even more important is biosafety. We have been paying very lip service to these issues, and now the time has come that we have to consider it very seriously. You see, the number of viruses have come one after another, and there is every likelihood that if we continue to behave the way we are behaving in terms of wet market, in terms of increasing our menu of animals, we are going to get another pandemic. It is only a matter of time. So I think the hard lessons that we are going to learn is that we have to respect biodiversity, we have to respect biosafety rules, and we have to be very careful that interaction between human beings and the animal should not be as intimate as we have already done all these decades. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So since you're talking about animals, since you're talking about interface, since we're talking about all these aspects, I'd like to bring Kalyan Verma in because he works very closely with wildlife. As far as wildlife is concerned, definitely a boost. But don't you think at some level it's unfortunate that we have to see a pandemic like this for us to suddenly become aware about wildlife and other aspects?
So I agree with what Professor has said, and I agree with you. I think it's a great time. I think the way I would like to see this corona lockdown period is a good demo version of how a better world can be. Like you said, our emissions, our pollution levels are down. We are seeing a lot of wildlife, not just in India, other parts of the world bouncing back. So I think this is a good example, a preview for us to show that if we actually want to go down this path where we can live sustainably in the future, we can actually let the environment bounce back, not just environment, wildlife as well. So, and the nice thing about wildlife is that they need a little bit of space and they will bounce back, Across the world, we are seeing this. So I really think, and what I agree with Professor now, because I think this has given us kind of a habit of reducing our consumptions. We're not using our vehicles, working from home as much as possible. And I know that once this lockdown comes down, people will want to get back, get the industries going. But I think we can use this as an example, or use this time as a learning for human beings to, as we go forward, how it's going to play out. And Frank, my bigger worry is climate change. Of course, we've taken unprecedented steps to stop corona across the world. But in a decade, climate change is going to hit us as badly, as many lives are going to get affected. But climate change is a slow pandemic, which people don't see on the face. And I think that's something that we can use this as an example to work towards.
Okay. All right. Taking that particular point forward then. So, Mr. Rashmi, is this just a fleeting change, or could it lead to longer lasting falls in emissions? And, can we sort out those issues as a whole as well?
Frank, I see this problem of COVID-19, which is a very huge global threat, as something which is going to haunt us for a pretty long time. In fact, the scientists also don't see the solutions coming very fast. The vaccines are still being developed, and they will take not less than a year and a half or maybe 2 years for these to appear in the market. So a global public threat, the like of COVID-19, is going to be with us for quite some time. And the history also bears testimony to this. We have had repeated outbreaks of pandemics like this, whether it is SARS or MERS or Ebola or Nipah. There are global infectious diseases like this have come back again and again. And this is only the most latest example of this kind of outbreak. So I think we will need to learn to live with this. And there is a great degree of similarity with the kind of environmental threats which we are talking about. And the climate change or desertification or the loss of biodiversity, these are all global environmental threats. And they are strikingly similar to this threat of global infectious disease that we have today. One is that, number one, they are anthropogenic. Today we are talking of a disease that is the transmission is taking place from human to human. And climate change is also basically an anthropogenic problem, a problem created by the humans themselves. The second striking similarity is that, this is something which can be addressed if we have a coordinated global response. In the case of Corona and COVID-19, all the governments have acted forcefully and rapidly, and they have been able to contain the problem, or depending on the kind of capacity which they have built, they have handled this problem in their own manner. In fact, this is a classic example where the developing countries, in fact, have done better. They have responded better than the developed countries, where despite the fact that they have greater public health preparedness, somehow the response has been muted and in fact has been a little lax. In this case, it is quite clear that if the government is determined, if the community is determined, there is a possibility of handling disasters and threats, global threats like this, in an effective manner. So this is the second lesson which we can learn from this kind of threat. So although the threat is real and threat is going to persist for quite some time, I think there is a hope that we will be able to, change our lifestyles, change our thinking, and that is the positive thing about it. Very clearly, we can see the link between the environmental gains in terms of the cleaner environment that we have, in terms of the purity of water or the cleanliness of the air. Of course, it has come at a huge economic cost, huge economic disruption. And obviously, we cannot follow this model where we bring down the economic activities just to achieve environmental gains like this. We will have to think of something more sustainable, more long-lasting. And that is the concern which we need to have. We should have more respect for the environmental regulations. And then we will need to, as we move towards economic stimulus or recovery plans after to handle post-COVID problems, we will need to be fully aware of the environmental impact of the recovery plans, because the more economic activities, we will need to bounce back, and perhaps in this process we might lose sight of the environmental concerns that we need to respect.
Right.
So we will, I think this is a challenge which all the policy planners need to keep in mind, that the process of economic development should be more sustainable and ecosystems should be respected. So that is the third thing which I think we'll need to keep in our mind.
Sure. Okay. All right. Taking the discussion forward and taking a couple of points made by Mr. Rashmi forward with you, Professor Varshney. The first one, of course, being how serious is the world really as far as climate change and the environment is concerned? Because over the decades, we've seen that governments have been dragging their feet on this particular issue.
I think the climate change issue and the coronavirus effect have a very complex relationship. In fact, there are chances that we will be missing our proper concerted effect on climate change because the economies have been very, very weak now. And therefore, the resources available to handle the climate change issue are becoming very difficult. And therefore, it seems that the kind of problems that we are facing in terms of climate change are far more serious and complex. And in fact, they require far more concerted effect by the global community in a unison manner. Of course, the coronavirus has told us to act globally and collectively and cooperatively. This must be a lesson. But because of our economic situation, which has been created by the coronavirus, the chances are that we are going to slip back on our climate change effort very seriously. In fact, not all countries are in that position to do. Many of those countries which are very enthusiastic are also going to drag their feet, as well as you know already that United States doesn't really recognize this as a problem as yet. And therefore, the complex situation that is going to develop is something which we are going to really analyze as the time goes by. But I see that the prospect of really having a very strong 1.5 degrees out of question. And therefore, as we want to really revert back to with our production and with our anxiety to catch up the production and to really give a startup with a bang or to the industrial production, the chances are that we are going to slip very badly. And once that happens, the kind of catastrophe will be many times more, both in longitude and in latitude, which means 360-degree problem is going to be such that perhaps we are not yet prepared. But the lesson that we have learned is that the only way to deal a global problem is to really have a common understanding, which coronavirus has tried to put a seed. And this is something that might help. But the challenge is very, very daunting. And the question that we were expecting, that very serious issues and the kind of seriousness that is required for climate change will be available, will not be there. The second thing that I want to make it, that the international and globalization has told us that perhaps this is not something on which we can depend any longer. This can only increase our misery. And therefore, the question is that we have to think altogether a different paradigm of community relationship between the governments and among the world community, rather than depending on totally and banking upon globalization, which was for 3 decades we have been practicing and we have been encouraging. And it is that precise thing which has resulted into global pandemic, for which every country is suffering. And more than that, it is the poor which is suffering. One thing I would like to tell you, if you take the geography of the death that is taking place, you will find that those communities which have less of means and which are deprived have suffered most from this. So I think a kind of class differentiation is going to take place when you have a global problems like this, because those which are marginal communities and those which are living in areas which are unsustainable, and those communities are the places where actually industry survives. And once you have a stress because of the pollution and because of the industry, it is this population which becomes highly vulnerable. So I think this is a very serious matter. And this kind of a contrast which is going to magnify because of these problems is going to create a very serious social tension and social despair. And I don't think that governments are capable of ending a large-scale result of this kind of dissatisfaction and this kind of separation between the communities in the same city. We have seen in New York, we have seen in many other places. This is the geography of the death.
Okay, let me take the point that you're making forward, that of the globalization. Ms. Rashmi, this issue of globalization, I have to ask you a question there, a bigger question of whether the environment and development can coexist.
Yes, certainly. In fact, this debate is a perennial one. And there are 2 schools of thought, but it is not an either or choice. We cannot think of environment and development in 2 separate boxes. They have to go hand in hand. And development doesn't mean only globalization. Although we are living in a globalized society, and there is a real danger in a post-corona world of anti-globalization forces being intensified, we need to be fairly cautious of what we are doing. We should not allow the environment to be seen as something antithetical to development. What we need to do is that the process of development should become sustainable. we should have developed. We should mainstream a respect for the natural resources, a concern for preservation of natural resources, a concern, a strategy for decarbonization. We should mainstream in the development process itself so that we are free from the problems which we are foreseeing, both in terms of environment and as also development. After all, you might see that in the post-COVID world, in a matter of 2 to 3 months or maybe 6 months, you will see that the problems of equity, the problems which are created by market, they are going to be much more going to be dealt with great degree of urgency. After all, the sufferings and the caused by the economic disruption is not something which a large section of our population is going to bear very easily. And those will become major concern, and we will have to deal with those concerns. How can we make the process of development equitable and at the same time friendly to the environment? These are the questions. And in this process, we need to develop or strategize our methods of energy transition, movement towards renewables. We should reduce our dependence on the fossil fuels, oil, make the process the loss of biodiversity should be minimized. And in fact, the challenge of corona has given us something to think about. As Professor Vaishnav was mentioning, that in this we have seen the value of working from home. Perhaps we can be as productive through digital conferences and digital interactions as we are in the normal process. And we have huge savings, less travels, less transportation, has huge costs. I think the world is going to see, in India particularly, we are going to see fundamental changes in the way we work, the way we live, and these are positive things. We are going to think differently, and maybe this is a positive thing where we are perhaps going to become much more conscious about our environmental responsibilities. But that's something, and we need to capitalize on this.
Okay, all right. Kalyan Verma, talking about lessons now, as far as you are concerned, what is the biggest lesson that you believe that we have learned as a result of what we've seen over the past month or last few weeks? And also, how do we ensure that we keep the momentum going post the lockdowns?
So first of all, I mean, it's not 100% proven there, but we are 99% sure that the coronavirus started because of illegal wildlife trade in China. Most probably, scientists believe that it's from pangolin, which is a highly traded animal in whole of South Asia. So right after this corona, once it's spread in China, there's a first time in history, and China is a hard country to deal with. First time in history, China has completely stopped wildlife trade across the country. Unfortunately, there is news that they might open it up again. But I think globally, we need to put pressure on China to really stop that, because at the end of the day, a lot of origins of diseases come because of biodiversity loss, So I would say, I think that's a great learning for us in the sense that we can't be, and I agree with what Professor and Mr. Rashmi has said, it can't be business as usual anymore. I do agree that, our economy is getting hit and we need to bounce back. But one thing I noticed with Corona is what Mr. Professor said earlier, it's a class thing. I have to say this, sorry, but the reason the world is reacting the way it is because it's hitting the traveling class, the high class with jet set around the world. It wasn't really affecting the poor and the marginalized community. But when you look at climate change, this is the community that's going to get hit. And when we have these lockdowns, people like us will somehow survive, but these communities are really going to struggle. So within this framework, I really think we need to redefine what is growth. Is GDP the only measure for us to have growth in? And I agree with what others have said. We need to account for environment in that. And for the first time in history, coal is the most expensive fuel in the market right now. Maybe if we can keep that trend going, maybe if in the next 1 year, India is going to scale up its energy needs, maybe why don't we invest that whole thing in solar and renewable energy? So this is actually, I feel, an opportunity in disguise for us to redefine how we see growth, how we see globalization, and biodiversity conservation, and we, at the end of the day, we know that preserving environment, preserving forests is going to benefit all of us. And this is a good shock for everybody saying that, this is how things can get bad. And we can't afford to have another virus like this hitting us 5 years from now. It's going to really kill all of us. So I think it's been a great learning, and I really think we should take that. And unfortunately, I don't have hope in leadership of Western countries. But I think developing countries like us, we can probably take a lead in defining this growth more sustainably and more environment friendly going forward.
Absolutely. I think there's some very valid points that you made there. It's now time to get closing comments from all my guests. I've got very limited time on the program, so I'm going to ask you to be brief, starting first with you, Professor, with the best way forward.
I think there are 2-3 things which we have become very clear, that the vulnerability of the population to any crisis of this nature is not dependent upon the genetic code, but it depends upon the PIN code. So first of all, we must understand that. And that has been proved very, very variously by different countries to show this. Second thing that I want to say is that the calculus that we have been working on so far, that for few, we have sacrificing the future of a majority because of the myopic, our feeling and myopic vision. This needs to change. This calculus needs to change. The third thing that I want to say is that development is fine, but I think development has to define de novo, that what we mean. The kind of development that has taken place so far is not the kind of development which is going to really provide us the relief and the kind of life that we expect for our people. I think this is the time that we have to redesign this development. And second thing, and the most important thing, is that we are aggressively moving to the new frontier for exploitation. Now, this is a very disturbing trend. The ocean mining is now a craze, and all countries are now having some kind or the other who are capable and who are rich to go whole hog for the ocean mining. So I think these are disturbing trends which need to be looked at. And there is a good debate that we must really have. Should we open these new resources? Because already the kind of exploitation that has taken place has created and has brought us to this kind of brinking or this kind of a danger. With this, I would like to say that the coronavirus has given us many lessons to really redesign our development and to really see. We are going to see a new world post-corona. That I would like to.
All right. Mr. Rashmi.
Frank, the way I see it, I see that both the governments and the corporate world and also the community at large, they are going to see a value in respecting environment after COVID-19. One of the important lessons is that in fact, the private sector, which normally works on the principles of the market, they would realize that they can have great savings if they change the way they work. If they respect the environment, if they modify their production processes, they can perhaps reduce their expenditure. They have the learnings from COVID-19, and same with the governments. If the government internalizes these environmental options as part of their policy making and their developmental policies, I think we will be able to move society towards a decarbonized world much faster. And the challenges of COVID has made us realize that these things are doable, only if we are determined. And this is a good lesson which we have learned.
All right. And Kalyan, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
So I think that this is the first time since World War II where so many countries have gotten together to fight a common enemy. And it is environmental based issue. And in the future, we're going to deal with a lot more. So I think that I see a lot of hope in this. I think it's a good reminder for all of us that what can go wrong. And I think we have to use lessons from this. I think we as citizens of India, and as we bounce back from this, we need to push our governments, not just our country, but globally, to have environmental policies that make sure that we protect biodiversity, safeguard ourselves against climate change, and make sure that this kind of thing doesn't repeat in the future. So I think we needed this, I feel that we needed this to teach us that what can go wrong with this world. And I think hopefully we use this as a good lesson for all of us.
Okay, the coronavirus pandemic has been an eye-opener for mankind is what the panelists are suggesting. There are several lessons that it has taught us. It is now time for us to act and take this forward and ensure that we coexist and we ensure that development and environment also go hand in hand. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.